In 1946, 5 new track records were set, including one equaling a world record at 6 furlongs. Turf riders along the coast dubbed Longacres the Miracle Strip. That same season, Johnny Longden, the nation's leading jockey, came up from California to ride in the mile and finished last. "This Longacres track is certainly the fastest strip I've rode on," Longden said. "Must be the fastest in the country, and probably the world." The secret of the track's speed rested in its racing surface, a fine alluvial soil washed in by years of heavy rain. But the price for speed was expensive, as the track flooded nearly every off-season.
Look down here, it looked like an ocean. There were big waves hitting against the railroad tracks. And barns had been moved right off of their foundations and moved maybe 400 or 500 feet. And they had to struggle to get them back into place and to put them back onto their locations. So we went through a lot of struggles and a lot of problems due to that water. There's nothing worse than water.
Joe and Luella adapted to the floods by dyeing the carpets of their tote-board cottage mud brown and hanging their furniture up on the walls before they left each season. After the worst flood in 1947, reporters asked Gottstein if the track would be ready for the next racing season.
"We'll be ready, come hell, but please, Lord, no more high water."
By 1958, a generation had grown up at Longacres. Even Gottstein's daughter, Joanne, had grown up at the track and was now married. Her husband, Maury Alhadeff, was better known throughout the Northwest as radio correspondent Jerry Morris. Alhadeff eventually left radio and brought his marketing skills to Longacres.
This is Longacres.
He created and hosted the first weekly television show in the country devoted to horse racing, and with it brought in a new generation of racing fans. On the backstretch, Longacres had become home to families for whom racing had been a way of life for generations.
This is a family business, especially on the backside, and surprisingly, it's changed very, very little. The barns are all the same, the colors are the same, there's almost nothing has changed. Even the people, the amazing thing about it is the majority of the same people that were there 30 years ago are there today. There's some exceptions, but the majority are still there, just a little older.
My husband started riding at Longacres when the first year it opened, and he rode there, oh gosh, I don't know how long it was, but he had a bad spill. And a horse stepped on his head. Perfect horseshoe marked on his head. But he got over that and went back to riding again, Longacres. He won his first race at Longacres on a horse called Fresno. He was a rider and he was a jockey's agent. He'd been a valet and a trainer. You name it, he did everything. Like I say, he was on the track since he was 12. He did good at gambling. He won the pick six out here, paid over $100,000. And like I say, that was his life, was gambling. Of course, he loved the horses. And
before I graduated from high school, I knew what I would be doing. I knew I would be involved with racing and preferably a trainer, and so as things progressed, my father was a trainer, and I started training horses, and that's all I've ever done since. And the track This track here, it's been a second home to me, and in fact, we used to live over in the Yakima Valley, and eventually we moved about 5 miles away from here, and that's where we live now.
Linda was very young when Joe G. Called him into the office and asked him to be the clerk of scales. I think he was, 28 or 29 years old. And he says, now, Linda, he said, this could present a problem for you because a lot of these riders are older than you are. You're going to have some respect around here. He says, why don't you try wearing a hat? And that's why Lindy's worn a hat. He went out and bought a hat that year, made him look a little older, and it's been a ritual with him for all these many years to go and get a new hat every season. About 6 or 7 years ago, I said to him, Lindy, do we really have to go get these hats now? I don't think you needed to look older anymore.
The backstretch was kind of a combination playground and a place where we could also pick up the extra money or any money that we had coming that we needed in those days. Walking a hot for a dime, you know, cooling horses out after a workout or a race, or mucking stalls out or something like that. And always on the lookout for a chance to get to ride a horse around, just even the stable pony get a chance to ride it. All the kids wanted to be a jockey, obviously, at those times. The girls didn't have much opportunity in those days, but the boys were always looking for a chance to throw a leg over a horse.
Basil Frazier was one of the outstanding riders at Long Acres, and he probably had the best false pace of any rider I've ever seen. He could get on a horse, and when he was riding a horse, the other riders knew that the horse that Basil was on would probably take the early lead, and they'd sit back a little bit. Well, Baz had set a false pace on his horse, and when these other riders wanted to take a run at him, Baz had been saving his horse, and he'd turn him loose, and he won a lot of races that way, and probably that was one of his outstanding riding abilities.
If anybody is going to be a legend in his own lifetime, it has to be Gary Bays due to the accomplishments that he's posted over the past 20 years around here. I think he's been leading rider here at Long Acres 6 times. He's won the Long Acres Mile 4 times. I think that's a bit obscene. And I have no doubt that he'll probably win it once more before we're through.
The 3 riders from here that have gone on to some type of national acclaim have been Russell Bays, my cousin. He left here in the late 70s and has been the leading rider in Northern California for the last 12 years. Gary Stevens was the next one. He left here in 84, 85. And he's been a leading rider on the Southern California circuit since then, and he's won some very major stakes in the country. And the last one was Gary Bolanger, who was the leading rider here 3 years in a row, late 80s, early 90s. And he's went down to Northern California where he's had a considerable amount of success. I have a lot of family and relatives that are trainers involved in racing in some way or another here in this area, and racing has just been more enjoyable for me to race in the Seattle area at Long Acres.
If you're heading across Lake Washington, both floating bridges are wide open, but southbound 405 is a very tough ride as you make your way down to Long Acres, bumper to bumper from at least the Valley Freeway.
By the 1960s, the state's population was double what it was when the track opened in 1933. Dams, which saved the track from winter floods, also enabled further development. freeways brought new residents to the surrounding rural area. The vision Bill Boeing had at the Meadows in 1910 materialized as the largest aircraft company in the world. Seattle's racing fans had witnessed the infancy of flight above the Meadows infield, and 50 years later watched man take his first steps on the moon on televisions at Longacres. The track that began as one man's dream had also developed into a major industry.
The four-footed industry. From only 8 breeding farms in Washington in 1933, the industry has expanded to nearly 300 farms today. On these farms, over 800 foals are born each year as compared to a mere 21 produced in 1933. Thoroughbreds are bred in 36 of the state's 39 counties, adding a net worth of over $24 million to this state's economy.
Washington's thoroughbred breeding became the state's 6th largest industry and ranked 5th in the nation for producing foals and stakes winners. In 1963, Joe Gottstein retired.
I'm 72 years old and have spent most of those years on a racetrack in some capacity. Now I'd like to relax a bit and relinquish the details of running the track to my son-in-law, Maury Alhadeff.
Alhadeff was more impressed by the beauty of racing than the gamble itself. A devoted patron of the arts, he adorned Longacres with masterpieces by local and international artists, creating one of the finest collections of equestrian art in the country. Under Alhadeff's management, Longacres became more involved in the community. The track's image of cigar-smoking men was replaced by a marketing campaign that attracted the whole family.
People ask me, why do I go to Longacres? Why? Because it's there.
No longer responsible for running the track, Joe Gottstein was free to enjoy the sport he learned to love as a child, taking pleasure in witnessing King's Favor carry his colors to victory in the Longacres Mile.
He remains a watchful presence at the track. Every night after the 10th race, when the crowd is gone, he wanders through the grandstand and behind the mutual lines, shutting off lights employees have forgotten.
On January 1st, 1971, the universal birthday of all thoroughbreds, Joe Gottstein died.
Joe Gottstein would thunder and roar. He would hurl ultimatums. He scowled, cursed, threatened. And then, after assuming an unalterable position, he would ask for advice, listen, and as many times as not, do what he said 15 minutes earlier he would not do.
They made one die like that. Then they broke the die. He's a mean, dirty SOB sometimes, but next to my father, I respect him more than anybody else.
It's hard to say where it comes from because Joe was not a farm boy. He was a city boy. He was in real estate. But he loved horse racing. He loved the gamble of horse racing offered.
The soil composition that made the Meadows the second fastest track in the country gave Longacres runners the same speed advantage. The world record was set 3 times at Long Acres for a 6.5 furlong race. Sandy Fleet in 1966, Turbulator in 70, and Best Hitter 3 years later. Trooper 7, the local champion, equaled the record in 1980. Gray Papa came back from an injury in 1972 and set the fastest mark for 6 furlongs.
And down the lane they come with Chinook Pass on the inside by 2.
In 1982, Long Acres was again the backdrop when Chinook Pass set the world record for 5.5 furlongs in 55 1/5 seconds.
He's the colt Chinook Pass.
A feat that remains unbeaten. With 5 world records to its name, Long Acres had clearly established its place in the world of thoroughbred racing. By its name alone, Seattle Slew, winner of the coveted Triple Crown, brought even more attention to Northwest racing.